Hey, this is Miss Cooper here with your commentary video part 2 for chapter 11. Again, dealing with looking at this pattern of imperialism and the things that it led to: nationalism, the global conflict, World War I, the Depression. Now we're at World War II. So this is a very thick document. Many pages that we will not read all of them, but we're going to give you a good rundown of some of these bold headings, making sure that you're familiar with what this document is talking about. It's kind of going blow by blow. The other document that I summarized basically goes straight from the textbook in terms of, who's doing what and where. This is really from Encyclopedia Britannica, so it's kind of lengthy, but we're going to go ahead and get into this and try to give you a little bit of what we can. So we got some dates here. 1939 to 1945. This is called the Second World War, the conflict that involved virtually every part of the world during those years of 1939 to 1945. The principal belligerents were the Axis powers, which include Germany, Italy, Japan, and the Allies, France, Great Britain, and the United States, the Soviet Union, and to a lesser extent, China. The war was in many respects a continuation after an uneasy 20-year hiatus of the disputes left unsettled by World War I. The 40 million to 50 million deaths occurred in World War II make it the bloodiest conflict as well as the largest war in history. Along with World War I, World War II was one of the great watersheds of 20th century geopolitical history. It resulted in the extension of the Soviet Union's power to nations of Eastern Europe, enabled a communist movement to eventually achieve power in China, and marked the decisive shift of power in the world away from the states of Western Europe and toward the United States and the Soviet Union. So you see, at the end of these two wars, there are two powers that emerge: the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, Russia, the Soviet Union. That we were the two superpowers that were left standing. And remember, the United States is not an old world order. The United States is a young nation, and we came out on top at the end of this war. So the Axis initiative and Allied reaction. By the early part of 1939, the German dictator Adolf Hitler had become determined to invade and occupy Poland. Poland, for its part, had guarantees of French and British military support should it be attacked by Germany. Hitler intended to invade Poland anyway, but first he had to neutralize the possibility that the Soviet Union would resist the invasion of its western neighbor. Secret negotiations led on August the 23rd to the 24th to the signing of the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact in Moscow. A secret protocol of this pact, the Germans and the Soviets agreed that Poland should be divided between them, with the western third of the country going to Germany and the eastern two-thirds being taken over by the USSR. Having achieved this cynical agreement over the other provisions of which stupefied Europe even without divulgence of the secret protocol, Hitler thought that Germany could attack Poland with no danger of Soviet or British intervention, and gave orders for the invasion to start on August the 26th. News of the signing on August the 25th of a formal treaty of mutual assistance between Great Britain and Poland to supersede a previous, though temporary, agreement caused him to postpone the start of hostilities for a few days. He was still determined, however, to ignore the diplomatic efforts of the Western powers to restrain him. Finally, at 12:40 p.m. on August 31st of 1939, Hitler ordered hostilities against Poland to start at 4:45 the next morning. The invasion began as ordered. In response, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany on September 3rd at 11 o'clock a.m. World War II began. So the breakout, who started? It wasn't as messy as World War I. We knew exactly who started World War II. It's clear who made the first declaration of war, who was doing the first acts of aggression. All of that is very clear. Germany was really at fault this time. So this document goes on and on, but there are a lot of bold headings: forces and resources of the European combatants. Very important information, okay? What kind of resources? Who were they getting things from? It's important. I want you to look into that. Then there's another heading here: the war in Europe from 1939 to 41, the campaign in Poland. All of the bold headings are definitely places that you need to go in and do your noun and verb activity so you can be clear on who's doing what. the Baltic states and the Russo-Finnish War. So we got Finland over here, getting involved. The war in the West, the invasion of Norway, the invasion of the Low Countries in France. An invasion, it can go on for days or it can go on for years, but ultimately it's a strategy. The evacuation from Dunkirk, Italy's entry into the war, and the French armistice. Then we have the Battle of Britain, Central Europe, and the Balkans. Definitely read about what's going on with the Balkans. Remember, that was an issue with World War I. Russia was all eyeballing the Balkans and trying to get Serbia to go do stuff so basically they can have a sphere of influence in the Balkan region. Other fronts, Egypt in 1940 and 1941. There's stuff going on in East Africa, Iraq, and Syria. I mean, this war was really massive. The beginning of Lend-Lease. Lend-Lease was a program pretty much, let me read a little bit. On June 10th of 1940, when Italy entered the war on the German side and when the fall of France was imminent, U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt declared the United States would extend to the opponents of force the material resources of this nation. Lend-Lease. We're going to lend them stuff. We're going to loan it to them. We're not going to give it to them, but we're going to lend them what they need, the people that need help in the war. Hope the allies, pretty much. We're going to lend and lease stuff to them. That's Franklin Roosevelt, FDR. Same guy helped us get out of the Depression. Germany's strategy, the invasion of the Soviet Union, even though they were supposed to be a non-aggression agreement, it said you're not going to be aggressive toward us, but yet they're invading them. Read about it. The war in the Pacific, okay, that's a big deal because it's kind of where we end up getting Japan to back off. The war in China, Japan goes in, just decides we're just going to jump on y'all. We're just going to go fight y'all. We're just take stuff, invade, straight invade. This is what they did. The Japanese policy between 1939 and 1941. There's Pearl Harbor, very important. The reason why we bombed, why the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor is because there was an embargo that the United States placed on oil to them, and that made them mad because they were being hostile in Asia. And Japan felt like you should just let us do what we're doing and leave us alone. And yeah, so read more about the Pearl Harbor and Japanese expansion. The fall of Singapore is another bold heading. The Chinese front at Burma. The developments from autumn 1941 to 1942, Allied strategy and controversies. Libya, Egypt, autumn of 1941 through the summer of 42. And then the last few pages deal with the Germans' offensive in southern Russia and how they pretty much froze to death and it didn't work out too well. So, we're going to probably do a graphic organizer activity because this is such a lengthy packet, and I will do a group activity. Well, we won't get to work in groups, but I will break the work up into groups of people. We'll do portions of this, and we will create some graphic organizers just to get us further into a lengthy and complex text like this. So that's your commentary video, part 2 for chapter 11. Thank you for being here.